En ocasiones estamos muy lejos. A veces perdemos contacto o esquivamos la mirada. Otras nos vemos obligados a ser distantes. Muchas veces no podemos escuchar, no podemos ver. Pero la realidad está ahí. Con las maravillas diarias de cada viaje. Con todos los sueños y esperanzas de la humanidad. Con todas las alegrías, lágrimas y miedos de un planeta vivo. Estamos llamados a estar allí. Estamos llamados a participar. Nunca dejes de ver. Deja que el cine abra tus ventanas al mundo.
Pianista, musicólogo, crítico musical, innovador compositor, fotógrafo y cineasta. Michael Nyman. Originario del distrito de Stratford, en Londres, Inglaterra, estudió en la Royal Academy of Music y en King's College, donde centró sus estudios en el piano y en la música barroca inglesa. Entre los años de 1968 y 1978, mientras trabajaba como crítico musical para la revista The Spectator, acuñó el término música minimalista y en la siguiente década reflejó e influyó en el pensamiento de la música contemporánea. La mayoría de sus reseñas, artículos y entrevistas importantes en The Spectator, New Statesman, The Listener y Studio International se encuentran publicadas en el libro Michael Nyman, Collected Writings. Luego de escribir el libreto de la ópera Down by the Greenwood Side de Sir Harrison Birtwistle, compuso la música para Il Campiello de Carlo Goldoni, la producción de apertura del Teatro Nacional, lo que dio origen a la formación de Campiello Band, posteriormente rebautizada como Michael Nyman Band, que durante más de 4 décadas ha sido el laboratorio para gran parte de su trabajo. En 1982 inició una larga carrera de colaboración junto al cineasta Peter Greenaway, para quien compuso las bandas sonoras de El contrato del dibujante, El cocinero, El ladrón, Su mujer y su amante, Sue, Conspiración de mujeres y Los libros de Próspero. Su popularidad comenzó con la galardonada película El piano de Jane Campion en 1992, cuya banda sonora vendió más de 3 millones de copias y fue nominada a los premios BAFTA y el Globo de Oro. Su música formó parte del éxito en taquilla de Andrew Niccol, Gattaca, Experimento genético, y la ganadora del Oscar, premios BAFTA y los festivales de Toronto y Sundance como mejor largometraje documental Man on Wire. En 2008, recibió el grado de Comandante de la Orden del Imperio Británico por sus servicios a la música británica. En los últimos años, se ha centrado en componer bandas sonoras para películas mudas de la década de 1920, al tiempo que ha producido y exhibido una serie de instalaciones de imágenes en movimiento multipantalla. Nyman with a Movie Camera es un tributo a la innovadora película original y una muestra del amor de Nyman por el cine, su ojo cinematográfico y su sentido del ritmo, mientras que War Work 8 Songs with Film es una evocación poderosa y conmovedora de los horrores de la guerra. Aunque la variedad y el alcance de su producción musical es una clara demostración de su versatilidad, la forma musical preferida de Nyman es la ópera, para la que ha compuesto una serie de obras influyentes como El hombre que confundió a su esposa con un sombrero, Facing Goya y Man and Boy, Dara, aclamada por la crítica. Sus 10 ciclos de canciones establecen textos de diversos escritores como Shakespeare, Neruda, Octavio Paz, Paul Celan, Milton y Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, así como de poetas populares de México, donde radica desde 2007. Ha compuesto música para varios de los coreógrafos más distinguidos del mundo, incluidos Siobhan Davis, Ashley Page y Lucinda Childs, entre otros. Tiene un programa completo de giras internacionales con la Michael Nyman Band, así como una serie de actuaciones únicas. Su música ha sido editada por diferentes compañías y actualmente cuenta con su propio sello discográfico, MN Records. Es sin duda uno de los compositores más innovadores y célebres del Reino Unido. Su creatividad incansable y su carrera multifacética lo convierten en una de las figuras más dinámicas e influyentes de la cultura contemporánea. Por eso hoy, el Festival Internacional de Cine de Monterrey reconoce con su homenaje internacional a la trayectoria artística a Michael Nyman.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Estamos entregando el Cabrito de Plata a nombre del Festival Internacional de Cine de Monterrey a la extraordinaria carrera y a la trayectoria de Michael Nyman. Thank you very much, Nyman. It's really an honor to be able
Muchas gracias.
to deliver.
And now, there it is. Muchas gracias. I'm very happy to be here and still not speaking Spanish, so it's thank you in English. Muchas gracias.
Es un honor para el Festival de Cine de Monterrey entregarte. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bueno, saludos a todos en Monterrey.
Sí.
And kisses. Gracias.
Gracias. So Nyman's Earthquakes, the title sounds very pretentious, but it's a very serious film. When I realized that all through my life I've had awareness of earthquakes, I mean on TV, on newsreel, on the radio, and through reading about them. And then the first earthquake that I felt I had any real relationship with was 1985, Mexico City. I first met Felipe Ehrenberg in the west of England in 1973. He spent 12 years trying to persuade me to come to Mexico City, and I eventually came in June or July 1985. And I had 3 amazing weeks with Felipe and Marcela Rodriguez and Lourdes Grobet and whatever. And then I went home. And then the next thing I know is that in September 1985, there was a terrifying earthquake here. So my next contact with Mexico and Mexico City was phoning on the kind of telephones that these young people don't know about. So it was me phoning Marta Helion and Felipe to find out whether they were safe. So the Mexico City earthquake in 1985, I experienced at one remove, and then the Michael Nyman band played in Kobe in 1994. We played my opera version of The Tempest, Shakespeare's The Tempest, Noises, Sounds and Sweet Airs. We played for a week in the Shin-Kobe Oriental Theatre. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, after I got back to London, there had been an earthquake in Kobe. And then I thought, sort of sentimentally, but maybe not, that some of the young people, mostly young people, who had seen Noises, Sounds and Sweet Airs, maybe they'd been affected by the earthquake. So I then, a year later, went back with the film crew to make a documentary. So in a way, I accumulated earthquakes until 2017, when I was actually in this house on September the 19th, 2017. And I experienced the earthquake here. I mean, I witnessed it without experiencing it, because I was in this house and I didn't feel anything. And then I went on the street, and all my neighbours were on the street. And then something that isn't in the film, I left very quickly. This was a very interesting kind of psychological. In terms of pandemic, I kind of ran away, and that's not in the film, but it's in the interview. And then 5 weeks ago, again, I was in this house, and to experience an earthquake in the middle of a pandemic was kind of strange experience, because everything had become reversed. So everybody was wearing face masks anyway, whereas in the 2017 earthquake, I now begin Nyman's earthquake with some footage that I shot on San Luis Potosí and Medellin, and suddenly I noticed face masks, which have become part of the culture. So it's kind of everything is kind of accidental. So my method of researching I mean, I make films by documentation rather than making a documentary. So a lot of the information in Nyman's earthquakes is kind of randomly accumulated. So not only the experience of the earthquake, but I also found so for instance, I have a friend called Michael Nyman. We were music critics together in London in the 60s. He then became a filmmaker, and he made a lot of films, documentaries about Cuba. And he has a friend here called Rosamata Fernandez, and I met her by chance. We went to a concert in Salanesa on Sunday morning, and I was talking to Michael about the earthquake film, and Rosamata said, "Why are you talking about earthquakes?" So I explained what I'm explaining to you. And she said that in 1985 she was the director of TV UNAM, and she shot a lot of footage from 2 or 3 days after the earthquake in '85. And I said, "Well, come to my house tomorrow, come here." And Max was here, and show me the footage. So we put that footage into the film, and then the footage that she had was everything that had been shot just across from my house. So in a way, it's like I write a piece of music, of gathering information and making something new out of something old. And sometimes there is kind of genuine research, but generally not. So fortunately it's not a documentary. So it's an artwork, the subject of which happens to be my multiple connections with earthquakes.
I was wondering, as I was listening to you, because there is something about the image, because we all in Mexico, and because of your career,
Yeah.
when we think Michael Nyman, we are always thinking in the composer, in the musician, in the musicologist. And then, as I was watching the film, I was thinking that listening the music, the Japanese group Nanas,
Yeah.
singing this beautiful cover of No Woman, No Cry. And I was thinking also the earthquakes as some metaphor, many metaphors. Like, it's so powerful, the images, and so dramatic, but when they find the music, it's incredibly beautiful.
Well, the other connection I have with earthquakes is that there are earthquakes, and then there are concerts where I perform either with the Michael Nyman band, or I arrange a performance, as I did with Nene's, where we raise money to make repairs from the earthquake damage. And in fact, the very last concert I ever played was on the 3rd of December in Torreon, when I was making a concert to raise money to repair the organ in a church somewhere in Oaxaca. So this whole question of me playing music and me getting people to pay money to either to help the survivors of the Kobe earthquake, or survivors from, or buildings or whatever. So that's the kind of secondary story. But it's kind of interesting talking about a film about earthquakes in the middle of this pandemic here with COVID all over the world, and I haven't really, I mean, apart from this whole question that we're all wearing masks, except we're not wearing masks, the whole question about different kind of fragility and different kinds of fragility of life and different kinds of protection, and an earthquake is very very physical. One of the things that interests me and concerns me about the earthquake film is that, in a way, it's a film about, I was going to say surrealism, but I mean serialism. So that every earthquake follows the same pattern of destruction. But obviously every earthquake has to do with its particular location, and every earthquake has to do with the reaction of the people to the earthquake and the situation, you know, whether it's a political situation or financial situation, or a rescue situation, or a geographical, seismological situation, which makes it very physical in comparison with, and I never expected to be talking about this, in comparison with COVID-19, which is kind of hidden, which, you know, is there now, is maybe in this room.
It's Oaxaca, it's a story, it's memory, it's archives, it's a contemporary life. It's Mexico, of course,
Yeah.
but there is also Japan, El Salvador,
Yeah.
the places. Because at the end, it's easy to understand that what puts everything together is the idea of the humanity, that like something essential,
Yeah.
that comes up with the idea of the tragedy. What about the places?
Well, Mexico I was involved with because I'd just been in Mexico. So Mexico City I was involved with. Kobe I was involved with because I'd just been in Kobe. Lenina Khan in Armenia I was involved with because a friend of mine had made a documentary for the BBC, and I wrote a soundtrack for this BBC. So Agnieszka Piotrowska had made this film, this documentary, and she asked me to write the music. So I wrote the music. And I mean, one of the important things about Nyman's Earthquakes is that I don't allow anyone to forget that I'm a composer as well. So I have an amazing archive of pre-existing music. Only one piece of which is the Out of the Ruins piece, is a real piece of earthquake music. And Out of the Ruins, you know, in terms of, I write music that starts in one place and becomes something else and then goes somewhere else. So in 1989 I wrote a piece of music that was connected with Paris. It then became the soundtrack for Agnieszka's film, and then it became a string quartet that was connected with the fall of Ceausescu in Romania in 1989, and then it became a sax quartet. So there's a kind of sense in which the music grows and changes its location, and also changes its purpose. And sometimes I think that the soundtrack is sometimes too strong for the images in this film, and then I kind of then I look at the images and think that no music can really express the kind of pain.
It's not that common, let's say, in filmmakers, that they begin from the music. No? Now, when I was listening to you and you were saying maybe the soundtrack was too strong for the images. Because I see your space and it's all full of images. So the idea of image and the idea of music or sound as a dramatic happening, how is your relation? Where do you begin?
So in a way, writing music and making films are totally opposite. Because in all the music that I've written since I've been to Mexico, like since '85, and lived here for 12 or 13 years, there's not one single musical image from Mexico that I've used. So I've not used any revueltas, I've not used dance music, I've not used anything, I've not caught anything like Danzón No. 3, never. So, but every image that I shoot in Mexico is obviously an image from Mexico and for Mexico, and then is combined with. It's not that the musical images are all European, but it's just they are European because I've written them in Europe. Even when I write all this music you see here was written regardless of whether I'm in this room or whether I'm in Milan or whether I'm in London or Paris or whatever. And here there's a piece of music which has an Aztec text about cutting the umbilical cord, how important it was to the Aztecs, to make a warrior out of a boy through the umbilical. Because I wrote a long piece at the beginning of the lockdown that uses this Miguel Luis López Portillo.
José López Portillo.
Yeah. A text in English that was translated by him that is about the Aztecs, but there's not one single note of Mexican or Aztec or fake Mexican music. So I've but put a camera in my hand and I find endless. I mean, I've got tens of thousands of photographs, films that I've got. But I also shoot fewer films in Europe than I shoot here. So there's something that captures my eye and captures my creativity, and that is independent. It's independent of two things, and I have to say this. So making the films is independent of the music, not only the music of Mexico, but also the music of mine. But also the films I shoot are also independent of all the filmmakers that I've worked with. So even though I've been working, I started writing film music, which is the first question that you didn't ask, in 1976. So that's 44 years of writing film music, and 44 years of working with, Greenaway, Neil Jordan, Jane Campion. There's not one single image that I've shot that is influenced by any of the films that I've worked on. There's one editing process that Greenaway used long before he made Draftsman's Contract, when he would count the number of frames that a shot should last. So he would say, okay, here's a sequence of shots, each of which lasts 36 frames. So a kind of totally randomizing process, which is something I do as a composer. And in one or two of the sequences in Nyman's Earthquakes, where those sequences are still photographs, this is the framework that we use. So instead of saying we're going to cut to the music, we cut on a kind of time basis. And there were I think one of the problems with some documentaries that use still images is, how do you sequence? How do you make moving sequences out of still images? And so this was one solution that we found. Otherwise we cut to the music, or we cut again. So that's the one thing I learned from Greenaway, But me as a filmmaker learned from him.
La realidad está ahí, en las maravillas de cada viaje, con los sueños y esperanzas de la humanidad, con las alegrías, lágrimas y miedos de un planeta vivo. Estamos llamados a estar allí, estamos llamados a participar. Nunca dejes de ver. Abre tus ventanas al mundo. Decimosexta edición del Festival Internacional de Cine de Monterrey.